Welcome. My name is Fernando Calderón. I'm a faculty member in the history department, and I'm also the graduate coordinator. This is my first semester as coordinator, but I've been at UNI since 2012, and I'm gonna be co-hosting this informative meeting with my dear colleague and new colleague, Dr. Shell Dong, but I will let her introduce herself.
Hello everybody. I am Dr. Cheryl Dawn. I am the new professor of public history at the University of Northern Iowa, and I coordinate all the public history programs, including the MA with the public history emphasis, the minor, the public history certificate, as well as the museum studies certificate for undergrads. So I hope this session will be really kind of helpful for anybody really thinking about graduate school in any kind of humanities field. So we will be speaking, Dr. Calderon will be speaking briefly about our program, but then the advice I'm going to give is going to be pretty broad to all those programs.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dong. So again, thank you all for attending this session, and we plan on doing this every semester, even though we generally our largest acceptance pool is in the is for the fall, but oftentimes we do have occasionally, it's pretty rare, we have people come in the spring. But so I'm just going to get right into it and by explaining give you a kind of an overview of the program. So we do offer a master's in history, and that master's in history is divided up into two different tracks. One of them is a thesis track and the other is a non-thesis track, and I'll talk about both of those separately. Um, so traditionally, the master's programs ask for a thesis, and the thesis is defined by the department and by really master's programs in general as an original manuscript, right? A master's length manuscript, which doesn't really go over, you know, the page numbers really don't really matter, but we always look at quality over quantity. Um, and the thesis is a project that the student, with the advice and guidance of an advisor, uh, work together on for the student to bring to fruition after 2 years in our program. Um, Oftentimes the thesis can sound petrifying because of the expectations, the process that you have to go through, before you actually write your thesis. We do require you and your advisor together come up with a committee made up of 3 faculty members. You can bring a fourth one in outside of the department. That's often has happened. And there is a defense, a proposal defense initially before the thesis moves forward. That's a defense that involves the committee members who, even the term defense oftentimes has this ominous kind of character to it, right? But it's really actually a conversation in which you are the expert in the room in many ways, and you present your proposal, what your research question is, and then there's this lengthy conversation, right, between you and the remainder of the committee, the other committee members, who ask you questions about, for clarification, suggestions, constructive criticism, et cetera, et cetera. It's important to bear in mind that everyone that's on your committee wants you to succeed, and so they will provide you with feedback that might oftentimes you might feel that it's a bit harsh and you take it personal, but that in no way should be something that you should worry about. This is all part of the process, part of the rigor of graduate school, and we really pride ourselves on that part as well, preparing in order to prepare our students for what comes next in their future, whether it's continuing on to a PhD or going into you know, some sort of job, right, that they can use their master's with. And then, of course, is the research and the writing of the thesis. And it generally students will start writing their thesis, you know, the last two semesters of their final year, or you know, sometimes they can even defend if it's if they feel if the advisor feels that they're ready, they can defend at the end of the year of their second semester. And have the summer then to do research. And you know, I personally have students do a I have students compile before the semester is over, the spring semester, compile a reading list so that you know, they can spend the summer reading a number of books and articles related to their field, or that focus on categories of analysis that might be useful for their own research project. So that's one track, okay? And you know, it doesn't really, everybody assumes that, you know, the thesis track is the only track, it's the only real track, right? But there is another track, and that's the research one, where you write 2 research papers, and that is a bit different. All of the requirements are the same in terms of credits and all that, but the research paper track is entails you writing 2 research papers, and it also includes an oral and written exam as well. And that is also something that is formulated by your with the assistance of your advisor and other people, depending on what field that you're going into. So that you will bring in experts in that field into that process. So some you know, feel that that often feel that if they take the research route, you know, that they're somehow you know, getting off easy, right? That that by doing these 2 research papers, they're able to get a master's, and that you know, maybe it's not as impressive, right? Than writing a longer thesis. But obviously there's no shame in that. You know, it also depends on what you know, what kind of future, where you see yourself going afterwards, right? Is it a terminal degree? I mean, is this just a master's that you want to get so you can, you know, teach more classes and or have more of a stronger historical background on things in the public schools? With a master's, you can teach at community colleges, so there is that option that you could still go into academia but remain in the community college sector. So for that, you know, it really depends, and it's a conversation that you were going to want to have with your advisor, which track is important, and which one do you think will cater to your ultimate needs and future plans. The thesis, we do emphasize though that if you are, you know, bent on going to grad school, to a PhD program, the thesis is the most is the track that we recommend, because generally PhD programs will want to see an applicant that has completed a thesis, that can do, you know, extensive primary source research, and is able to produce, you know, a semi-original or original piece of work. Oftentimes theses, depending on, you know, how you feel about it or what happens in your PhD program, if that's where you go, can serve as kind of this springboard, right, to and develop into a larger dissertation, right? So there is also the benefit from there's also that benefit as well. I've found in my experience in both advising as students, my own students, and being on other committees, that sometimes students will change from research to thesis, because they'll realize that, you know, they've already written 2 chapters or something, and all they need to now write is an introduction, a conclusion, maybe another chapter, and there you go. You have a thesis, right? And so that does happen, right? We wish that that would happen sooner than later, because there is not only is it important for planning and advising and for structure wise, but there's also a bureaucratic element to it. The grad school is very requires that any little change in like changes in advisor, committee, track, all those things, right, need to be need to be confirmed with them. They need to know that you're doing this, you're going down this route. So that's also very important. So these are 2 tracks, and within that there is an emphasis on, we have an emphasis in public history, and I'll actually let Dr. Dong talk about that after I'm done with talking about other things too. So I prefer her to read it because she's way more kind of seasoned in that sort of stuff. So our master's program over the years has been very successful in placing students not only in PhD programs, but also jobs. And these are a wide range of vocations, from community colleges to research institutes, think tanks, governmental offices or agencies, and even law school. We had students that have used their experience in doing very intense research and critical analysis as a springboard to go on to grad school. They feel more prepared, they feel more disciplined, they feel more like they can handle large amounts of information and make sense of it, which makes a lot of sense. But we've also had enormous success placing students in very prestigious PhD programs. A number of our faculty can name a number of people who they have advised either directly, have been the primary advisors, or readers on theses, who have gone on to PhD programs at Rutgers, Yale, Boston University, University of Pennsylvania, University of Texas, El Paso, Berkeley, University of Texas, or North Texas, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And these students have successfully completed their PhD programs as well. So we're also very, very proud of that. The fact that we are a small program, and we have had hills and valleys in terms of cohorts, or kind of a variety of cohorts. So oftentimes we've had 12, 13 people per cohort. Sometimes we've had 5. Sometimes this year we have 8. And that the reasons behind that are not necessarily are sort of out of our control as well. There's just less people wanting to go to into a master's programs. There's demographic changes, and a number of other things that we can talk about, and Dr. Dong can also mention in her section. Our faculty we have a wide range of faculty members who deal with a heterogeneous group or heterogeneous emphasis. They are experts in a number of different fields, regions, and specific topics, whether it's violence, human rights, colonialism, post-colonialism, nationalism, working class culture. I mean, the specifics, I mean, the list goes on and on. Medieval Japan, early modern Japan, the national period in China, race and ethnicity, Black Power, I mean, all of these, there's a wide range of specialties that can really cater to your interests, right? Maybe you won't, maybe there isn't someone in the department that directly works or is interested in the type of work that you're interested in, the topics you are, but nevertheless work within the region, or have some strong familiarity with the literature, the current debates, and can really still be a positive and helpful advisor in your graduate career. And so anyway, so despite our department kind of shrinking, right, and we're hoping to get more more faculty in the future, crossing our fingers, right, we're still capable to train we're still capable to train effectively and be proud of the type of students that graduate from our program. So I think that's something that we need to celebrate, and we also we need to acknowledge that the students that we do choose into our program are we consider to be qualified to be in our program. And so it is there is a rigorous evaluation of applications. Despite us being a small program and only having a master's, we do take it very, very seriously, because it's a reputation that we've developed over the last 20 or so years. And so we want to obviously stick to that. There is another track that is sort of catered to undergrads. We do have, and a lot of people don't know about this, we do have an accelerated Master's of Arts in History. What does that mean? It means that you can work towards your master's while you're working towards your BA. And so, when you do eventually get into the master's program, you only basically have a year left. That accelerated master's program can only be done if you're a declared history major. If it can only start, or you apply towards the end of your junior year, so your senior year would be the first year of graduate school for you. And then you would then also be accepted, when you're applying, you'd be accepted into the graduate program. So you just kind of segue into that after you graduate with your BA, right? In that year, those 2 semesters of your senior year as an undergrad, you're required to take at least 6 credits per semester in graduate classes, okay? And that's all that you're allowed to take. That's the max and the minimum, okay? And the requirements, the expectations are obviously are much higher. You have to have a 3.5 GPA or above. You have to complete the application, which requires cover letters and letters of recommendations and so forth. But you will not get. I think this is important to understand, is that those 12 credits that you take in that last year of grad school, I'm sorry, of your undergrad, they don't count towards your MA, right? They're graduate classes, but they don't count towards your MA. That will, you'll be doing that in the last semester. If I'm yes, I am correct. So anyways, so that program, for a long time has sort of been sitting in limbo, meaning that it hasn't been populated as much as we would hope, and that largely is because we haven't really emphasized it or advertised it enough. And as a graduate director, and with the help of my colleagues, we next semester and moving forward, we plan to really publicize this accelerated masters, and it's something that I think students will be very interested in, and can use as a way to challenge themselves and maybe get more out of classes than than what they're getting in undergraduate classes, right? So this is a route or a direction that is not for everyone, obviously, right? But nevertheless, with if you feel that you're able to, that this is something that you want to do, I really recommend that you either talk to me or talk to your academic advisor, and sort of see what they think about it, if you're prepared, if you're if you qualify, right, if you have the GPA to move forward in this program. So and then lastly, funding. Always have to, people always wonder how they're going to pay for their graduate education. And there is no doubt that that is something that's on people's mind, and is going to weigh whether or not they decide to go into grad school or not, unfortunately. And we do offer a number of funding packages, or a number of funding options. We do not, unfortunately, offer full rides. And that's been becoming more common in master's programs anyways. And master's programs hardly, unless they're top research universities and have a lot of excess money, are can provide or offer these full full ride packages. So anyways, so what funding is available? What type of funding? There's a number. First is our tuition funds, where we pay half of your tuition or full tuition, or a combination of full tuition and a small stipend, or a GA-ship, a graduate assistantship, or a TA-ship, where you assist a professor in our larger survey classes, either to grade or take roll, facilitate this study sessions, whatever, right? And of course, this is all limited to 20 hours a week. So, right, so you cannot go over that 20-hour limit. And our faculty are very good at keeping students sometimes way below that. So there is that bit of that perk. So those are the different types of funding packages that we offer, and they can be, like I said, a combination of things. There are also internships. There is also some funding. Oftentimes, this year it's a little bit touch and go, because the budget has been sort of decimated, right, as a result of COVID. And so, but the grad school oftentimes will offer travel funds to do research, to attend conferences. Of course, most of them have been canceled, or at least they're virtual. So there are resources that you can use, that the grad school provides, to help offset or bankroll your graduate education. Our facilities are very good. ROD is not a research library, but it does provide help, guidance, and is well connected with other, larger university libraries. We have a very effective interlibrary loan system. So it is possible, quite possible, to do original research, with the limitations that we have as at UNI. But I think that, we also need to understand that there's a lot of opportunities, and depending again on the topic that you choose. So you'd be surprised the things that you can find at ROD Library. So so that's really all I have to say on my behalf. And if you have any questions, please write them down, and at the end of the session, we'll open it up for questions from the audience. But I will then now pass this on to the baton to my colleague, Dr. Dong.
All right, everybody. So I will give, I guess, just a couple brief comments on public history, because I know some of you are interested in public history as a program. I think it is one of those growing fields right now, and I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities right now. I think especially with the pandemic, of course, that brings additional challenges. And I think one of the interesting shifts that we're seeing right now in the field is the shift towards digital work, digital humanities and digital history. And that is something that as a program, I'm trying to make sure that we at UNI are really on the cutting edge of that. And so what I try to emphasize both for undergrads and graduate students is just a really key set of skills that you should have to succeed in the public history field and to get a job in that. My Intro to Public History course and in all the kind of public history museum studies courses that I teach, we end up doing a digital humanities, digital history project. You get experience working with programs like ArcGIS Story Maps and Omeka. And then we also do the theoretical basis of public history, right? Ideas of shared authority, cultural heritage studies. How do we work with marginalized communities? How do we do oral history? And things like that. So that is my brief plug for the public history program. But what I think I want to spend the majority of my time speaking on here is how do we apply to graduate schools and graduate programs in history, but really in any humanities field? Because I think this is something that can be very confusing for students coming in. And it's not something that maybe your advisor or professors you know have really spoken to you in depth about. So I think the most important thing here is to do your research. Um, for the MA in history and for most MA programs, this is very flexible. You can end up choosing to go pretty much wherever you want to go for the MA level. And if you want to go on to the PhD from there, wherever you go from the MA, usually depending on how you, of course, do in that program, you can translate that very well wherever you go. But specifically for the PhD level programs that some of you might be interested in or thinking about in the future, this is the level that I think right now we're seeing the most stress in the system on. Obviously, many of these schools have been declining in the number of people they admit every year, even as the pools have gotten bigger. And in essence, the COVID-19 epidemic has really accelerated that, so that some of the top PhD programs this year in history alone have decided either to not take students or to take no more than a few students. So we're only seeing admittance in very, very small cohorts. So what does this all mean for graduate education? One of the first things I would say is really look at getting into MA, because I think this used to not be the case, but I think when you have your MA in history, it becomes much easier from now on to get into the PhD program, because they see that you've already done work on the graduate level. You have that thesis in hand. This was not always true. When I was an undergrad in 06 to 2010, the advice was go straight to your PhD program. But that is something that we have seen shift. The other really major thing to think about is think about what specific historical interest do you want? Because I think by the time you're applying to a history graduate student, you should have a pretty good idea in your mind, what field am I looking to study? Where do I want to end up? If you haven't already thought about it, think about what is the major research question that just animates you, that you just get so excited about. Because that research question is in so many ways the most important thing that you can have as a young scholar. What is the question about history or anthropology or anything in the humanities that I want to answer, and how? Hopefully, so some of it, so that you'll get in grad school, but as far as you can get to having that question down, you should have that down. And then the second thing to do once you have that question is look at which graduate schools and which graduate programs really fit those fields and those necessities. And that means doing quite a bit of digging into the grad program itself. So, everyone talks about the top 10, 15 PhD programs. Look at those. Absolutely look at those. But then take your time and look at some of the smaller schools and the other programs that are out there and see which faculty members really fit your research needs. Who do you think you could really click with? And this sometimes takes a lot of time looking at different faculty pages, and not all of us admittedly have great faculty pages. But do your digging. Um, the second thing here is to reach out then to those professors. That can be super intimidating. Um, but here's the thing, professors are people too. We love it, honestly, when we get that excited email from a prospective student saying, oh, I'm really interested in your work. Can we meet? Can we talk? And hopefully they do. And they reach out, and then you can have those conversations with people. It's no skin off your back to ask, right? The worst they can say is say no, and then you just move on from there. They're not going to remember you anyway. That's what I always thought of in grad school. But especially applying for the PhD and the MA level, you should know pretty well based on that outreach you do to faculty if you have their support or not. And then you're really looking to apply to the programs where you have faculty support. Because oftentimes when they are reading through applications, everyone's going to look somewhat similar. You're all, for the most part, going to have good GPAs, a good research sample, good letters of recommendation. So what really sets you apart is oftentimes who's advocating for you on the faculty. Plenty of times, it comes down to you have a pile of applicants, they're all great. Who do you think is going to do best in your program? Who do you think is going to fit best? And you need to make that case by doing that research, right? And reaching out and talking to people. The kind of second piece to all of that then, or the other side to that, is that you want to have a really clean cut and clear statement of purpose. Oftentimes I find graduate students or people who are applying make the rookie mistake. I did this when I first applied to grad school, of writing the statement of how passionate I am about history, how much I love history. And I remember, sitting there with my undergraduate advisor, Dr. Anna Krylova, and she said, well, this doesn't do anything for you. You think everyone who's applying loves history. I mean, you're applying to a history graduate program, of course, right?
You were born to be a historian, right, Dr. Dong? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, you kind of know you want to be a historian. So what more is there? So that statement of purpose is really for you to shine, to show to the program that you have a good idea of what your interests are, that you have a question, that it doesn't have to be fully developed, but it has to be there, right? And you have to say, these are the things I'm very interested in. This is why I think your program would be really good. And then you actually list those faculty that you talk to and say, look, this particular professor really specializes in what I do. This is where I think she might fit even into my committee. This is who I think might be a good advisor, that kind of work. If you are applying to a graduate program outside your field of major, that's okay too. But what you want to really show then in that statement of purpose is also why you're making this switch and how your work fits into history. What they're really looking for is, can you really, talk the talk? Or can you pick that up really quickly? The historiography, the kind of work behind being a history. So that's what your statement of purpose should do. It's really a project proposal. And it is, I would say, the most important document that you bring forward. Your recommendations, as best as possible, don't just ask professors, by the way, if they can give you a recommendation. Make sure that they're willing to give you a good recommendation, because that is something that I've seen happen, is that students get recommendations that they would rather not have gotten. And the other thing is to make sure that your recommenders can speak to the strengths that you're trying to sell to your program, right? Sometimes this means sharing additional information with them, like your statement of purpose, for example, telling them a lot of letters of recommendation, part of it is going to be rote, and it's the standard thing, but then all recommenders will throw in a couple of sentences if you ask them to, specifically selling you to that program. So be sure to ask them to do that. That's the other thing that shows that you've gone the extra mile, you've taken that step to make your application really, really strong. Um, and finally, I want to emphasize here that for humanities education, and this is true in history, I would say it's true in anthropology and in a lot of fields, is that you really should think early on in your undergraduate career about your foreign language competencies. And you will find that many programs will say specifically, what are your languages? I will say that when I emailed Yale, when I was first applying for graduate school, the it was a really famous professor. I'm not going to mention her name at this point, but she shot back, you know, a couple of conditions to me talking to her, which was, what are your languages? And what is your GRE score? Which I found a little bit weird, but you know, that's something that you really want to do. And especially I think for most programs, they require 2 languages in addition to English, that you must have, it not really speaking competency, but at least reading and writing competency. Because as a historian, it's really if you can read or write the language when you go into the archives and find those sources. I will say that if you apply to a field that is not US history, you have to show on applying that you have the language already. Because if you do not have the language, they're not going to take the chance. Especially considering what the field has looked like and the competition for faculty positions. I'm trying to think any other advice. Dr. Calderón, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, choosing PhD programs, if that's the route that you wish to take, takes a lot of time and researching, right? I mean, you have to take it obviously very, very seriously. And even master's programs, but definitely PhD programs, because this is a huge investment. You are, signing up to be an expert, to get a PhD. I think currently only just a little over 1% of the population has a PhD of the United States. So as you could see, it's a very rigorous, high stress, kind of career path, right? But in the end, it's I don't think there's anybody that will say, aside from, I'm talking in the academic sense, not in the institutional way, right? That what they do is what that they love what they do, producing and writing and reading and teaching, of course, which is teaching what you are passionate about. If that's what you want to do, then a PhD program might be what might be your destiny. So going back to my original point is that this then requires you to really look at these programs, and Dr. Dong is right. Email these professors early on. In the before you apply, the semester that you need to apply. Before the deadline, months before the deadline, contact these professors, get on their radar. Some of them are more than welcome to talk to you. All my students that have worked with me, at least, and others that I've worked in directly, have done that, have taken my advice and the advice of their advisors as well, and contacted these professors that, it might be, it does feel a bit intimidating, right? Because these are people that you are probably familiar with. You've read their books, and you think of them as, these sort of infallible people, or I don't know, whatever, right? But they're just, we're just normal people. And when I get emails from students who are interested in political violence in Mexico, or student radicalism, or working class culture, and I respond to them within, a couple hours or later that night or whatever. They're so appreciative, right? So appreciative that professors take the time to respond to them, even if it's a couple messages or so, and ask the right questions. Ask about funding, ask about, are they taking grad students because they might be going on sabbatical, they might have too many grad students, who knows, but aim high when you apply to these programs, if that's what you want to, that's what you really want to do. Always cast a wide net as well. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and apply to, I don't know, University of North Carolina, right? And or some other, Dartmouth, or not, well, they don't have a PhD program, but Yale, whatever, right? You apply to these programs, and you're determined that you're going to get into them, and if you don't, then you don't have any options, right? And what you would like is, what you would really like are options, getting accepted to, as many programs as you can, so that then you can, juxtapose them and analyze which ones are, providing you more funding, more opportunities for research, and the community that's there, how many other people are, kind of working within your same field. A lot of those things matter. You have to be also, feed the soul. I know I don't want to sound too esoteric or anything, but you do have to feed your soul, and you have to be comfortable where you are, because you're going to be there for quite a long time, and it's oftentimes grueling and difficult, and you need that camaraderie, you need that solidarity, you need that community, to kind of keep you on your feet.
Yeah, and I will also say here that oftentimes a tool that I think that you should think about is also reaching out, if you can, to graduate students who are already in the program, who might give you some sense of what the institutional culture is going to be like, because wherever you go, you're probably going to be spending 5 to 7 years there, right? And you want to know that it is a program where you feel like that's a good fit for you, that you can really succeed there, that, and all departments are going to have politics.
Yeah.
This is true everywhere you go, because all professors are human, and all professors will, at some point have drama. But you want to be sure that you're in a program where you will be protected and you will be respected as a student, and as someone who is vital within that community, right? And that is something that you can kind of parse a little bit through your interactions with professors, but also through interactions with students. That said, I will say the number one consideration once you get down to it, and it should be your only consideration, but it should certainly be one, is funding. You want to take the place that's going to pay you a living wage. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. That shouldn't be necessarily take them off the table. That should be kind of a very high consideration, as well as just any resources that are there, right? One of the things that I feel like UNC, Duke, and NC State, the three universities I've come from, often coast on for everybody, is how great the archives and the resources are in the region, and how strong each university's particular collections are. So that's like one of the selling points that you should think about where you're going. My friends who are at UT Austin, they have the LBJ library right there. For presidential politics, they have other sources. So even things like that, location to archives, things that you wish to work on, as well as just funding. Are they offering travel grants? Are they offering, a research year? Those are the perks that you should certainly think about. And the thing to remember here about history is, or any of the humanities programs, is that it is ultimately going to be a labor of love. And so if you're on the fence and you're thinking, oh, is this for me or not? It's something that I think you should try and figure out for yourself before you get into it. Simply, how dedicated are you to the field, because I will say that the research and the time, it takes a lot out of you. And for graduate school, success isn't really just, do you do well in classes? Do you get A's, right? I compare it to, at this point, building and decorating like a cake on like Great British Bake Off. Sure, all of them may taste somewhat nice, right? They got the nice sponges, they got, you know, whatever. But what really makes each of the cakes stand out are the little extras, the pretty decorations, the icing, the fondant, whatever. And that is all the other things that you do in graduate school after you get there. And you can start doing these things in undergrad, because these are the things that will make you stand out. And this includes internships, right? And that's one thing that we try to build into our public history program, is the internship experiences that we offer. If you write a particularly good class research paper that you're proud of, that your professor is proud of, take it to a conference. There are plenty of undergraduate as well as graduate school conferences. And there's even funding around that you do have to look for, oftentimes from the conference itself, that you can apply for, so you can go and present your paper. These are things that if you do ahead of time, they make you look really strong. They make you look like a candidate that gets what you need to get ahead, right? Even early on, starting to think about fellowship and grant opportunities is an important thing, and something that I think our students don't do enough of. So step outside of the box, right? The classes are important, but just as important to if you're successful or not are the other things you do. And for me, Dr. Calderón, I would say that when I was applying for professorships last year, what really counted as much as my dissertation, was the fact that I had public humanities, museum exhibit work, that I had digital humanities work in my background, that I had a couple of small publications, that I had panels that I had organized at major conferences. These are the things that yeah, you should do, and just put yourself out there, because it's really low stakes at this point, but they can make a big impact.
Yeah. And just before we go into our question segment, I want to say that the UNI does have does organize a graduate, the graduate school organizes a graduate studies conference, where you have the opportunity to present papers, you know, works in progress, right? Chapters, maybe even parts of chapters of your greater, larger thesis, to an audience, and even get feedback. And so this is something that you can even put on your CV and give you that that exposure and that experience. But at the same time, you know, it's also good to venture outside of the confines of the university and go to conferences, regional conferences. We're very lucky to be kind of in the middle, and you know, there are undergraduate or graduate conferences, you know, at the University of Minnesota, maybe even Iowa State, in Missouri. So there is a possibility to also network, right, at these conferences, and meet other grad students who maybe have some insight into graduate programs, or work. Their work is somehow related maybe to yours. You know, building networks is incredibly important, not only in grad school, but then later on in the academy. So now, with the remaining time that we have left, I wanted to open it up for questions from you, and we have a small group, so you know, we can spend some time on some questions or clarifications, things that you would like us to maybe expand on a little bit. We'd be more than happy to. So I'm gonna, well, I think you can just unmute yourselves, but please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Jörg Rocklitzer. Currently, actually, I am I already have a living wage right now. I'm a faculty member at Ellsworth Community College right now, and my goal is that I would like to start down the line a public history program at the community college level to feed
Mhm.
these students to your system in the end, to UNI, because I do that already with sociology, and so this is kind of one of my goals. And do you have any experience with community college faculty who actually still have to teach classes and work and kind of on the side study and finish a degree? Um, or a better question, is anybody else doing that from a community college, getting a master's degree in history or public history or anything?
Well, at the moment, we don't have any anybody in the anybody that's now right now working in community colleges seeking a master's in history.
Okay.
Like I said, community colleges, obviously, right? They at least the minimum they require is a master's or a master's, and so if we were to attract someone from a community college, it would be because they would like an additional master's in some other in a different field.
Yeah.
We we do have community members, non-traditional students. Oftentimes, we've had a number of them sort of peppered throughout different cohorts over the last, at least 12 years that or 12 years or 9 years that I've been here. And some of them have actually done all the coursework, but just never finished the thesis and came back to finish it, and for their own personal for personal reasons, or maybe because they wanted a promotion at their job. Generally, these students tend to have families, right? And so it's much difficult to finish a thesis in a timely fashion, like other students would, that are non-traditional, that are yeah, that don't have families or other obligations.
Mhm.
Um, so that's I think that speaks to the variety of people that our program attracts. We are doing some restructuring to our MA program. Our seminars are moving to being later in the afternoon
Yeah.
so that we can attract uh, teachers, who are usually off by 3 o'clock, right? And our seminars start around 5 or so.
Yeah.
And whether they, and if they want to go full time, if they want to go part time, it's really up to them. That's also possible. The only thing that is, in order to get funding, in order to get some funding or qualify for funding, you need to be full time,
Yeah.
and that means 9 credits, so three classes a semester, or at the end, you kind of finish your classes, but you still have to register for research, which keeps you eligible for funding, for the funding packages that you have, but also at the same time, it keeps you full time. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened before. It doesn't happen. We haven't had students that you're specifically talking about in at least the last 5 years or so.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you said that you were at what college? I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm a faculty member right now at Ellsworth Community College, Iowa Falls.
Okay.
And I'm the faculty member for social sciences right now, sociology, social problems, world religion. I teach some Russian history and some modern East Asian culture. So quite a portfolio, and I
Yeah.
really started enjoying a lot, especially teaching like Russian history and in modern East Asian cultures and many in these ways. And the community college world, we also want to kind of continue developing ourselves. And I was talking to my supervisors, and they kind of encouraged me. They said, "You are really into history. I mean, you make it exciting. Your history class is always full. It's the first one who are really full. And why don't you think about maybe down the line we would help you financially to maybe get the necessary credits or degree and
Yeah.
offer a public history program as an
Yeah.
AA or AAS program,
That would be wonderful. And we have a number of, European historians We have Dr. Sitkowski, who does nationalism in Eastern Europe, Polish. He's actually was born in Poland. Dr. Briss, who is the associate dean of the college of our college. He is a faculty member to this day. He just teaches only one class now a semester. He's a Russianist and studies Greece as well. And Dr. Machen, who is kind of more World War I French women's history. And am I missing anyone, Dr. Dong? I think that's it in terms of European history.
And I know Jorg is also interested in some Chinese. So
yes, and Dr. Holcomb and Dr. Hesselink, right, who is our Japanese historian. So, and of course, there are other classes that you can take, outside of the field of the history department. But you have to have a certain amount of credits in the history department. In order to fulfill the requirements. So political science and sociology, the majors are extensive.
I was told I can start technically opening and starting that program at least at the college with after I achieved like 18 credits, graduate credits in it. So that's what I was told by the college. But I have a really big interest. I like to get a master's, and I will probably also get for the thesis version of it.
Yeah.
I'm also I want to achieve a PhD in it, in that situation. And I looked into that after I had a really good talk to Dr. Dong. Actually, I was looking into some of my interests, and she said that I should look deep into what I can do. I'm proficient in German. Of course, I was actually born in East Germany, so I was part of the fall of the Berlin Wall with my parents. So I was sitting on the shoulders of my parents and saying, so many people, and look, all these police officers who do absolutely nothing, helping us.
You would like to try it. They wish they could have done something right, but they couldn't.
So they were just they had that expression of, hey, a time period is over, So and. When
I love Berlin. It's a beautiful city.
Yep, and I worked there for the German Parliament, and I have access through some colleagues and members of Parliament to the library of the Bundestag in the EU for research. So, and I like to use that option, so to make a really good research, So.
We used to. It used to be that. Well, I don't want to say it used to. It still is in some ways. There is a kind of an emphasis in U.S. history, right? In our master's has been heavily U.S.
History
emphasis, but this cohort that came in this year is more wide range. Europe, Asia, I think too, but more Europeanists than Americanists for sure.
What I'm also kind of interested a little bit is regarding to that, after the World Wars, a lot of Germans and families actually either they were POWs, they stayed here, or they immigrated, especially after World War I and also after World War II. So and a really interesting thing would be like some biography researches regarding to what actually became of them. So when they came here.
Yeah, I mean, Lincoln, Iowa used to be called Berlin, Iowa.
Yep, that was renamed. Yep.
I have a student who's working on a project right now on that. So
So in that neighborhood, I think that would be really interesting. And also in my own family, I mean, I had ancestors who did in the 20s and 30s trade stuff with the U.S. They sent alcohol to the 20s into the United States.
Excellent.
And so I'm really interested in something related that I can read about this for literally for all the time, so actually and do something about that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I had a question. So internships were kind of mentioned in like more of like a way of funding. Is internships or maybe other applied experiences included usually within master's or PhD programs outside of funding?
I'm trying to understand your question. So like, do we do unpaid internships and things like that?
Yeah, like are they like a necessity within the program? Like, is there some sort of uh standard for fulfilling an internship?
On my personal policy on that is really that you need to fulfill 120 hours of work on an internship. I am pushing my students, especially my graduate students, to seek paid internships where we can find it. I've been able to find a couple for students here and there this year. The majority of our students, especially our undergraduates, do unpaid internships. But the reason why I specifically, encourage my graduate students to go out there and get the paid work is you want to be paid for your work, right? I mean, you don't want to work for free.
Right.
B is really it looks better on a resume, on a CV, that your work got compensated. And usually when you are also paid, when there's money involved, you get I would say a higher quality level experience. And there are really different ways you can go about finding those internships, especially through the National Park Service, through AmeriCorps, through other organizations like that. So of course we do, and we will offer you, credit for an unpaid internship, but I do like to push my students a little bit.
Alex, did you have you've been meaning to try to?
Yeah, my question is, I'm looking at more of like a sports historian route. Would that be more like public history, or would that be like a different route?
Um, oh, I can say something about that. And Dr. Dong, I think you should chime in on this definitely. That's really up to you. What type of project you want to do? Um, do you want to, do kind of like a thesis? A
I'd want to do a
historical?
thesis.
What's that?
I'd want to do a thesis.
Yeah. So and then it's something that you would have to talk to in depth with me or Dr. Dong, right? On how that thesis would look like, right? Would it fulfill what is considered to be a public history, thesis, or would it be more of kind of a traditional thesis that you would do? Dr. Dong, do you have anything to add?
Oh, so I will say that yeah, really, with sports history, you can take that in kind of many directions. It's really how you kind of frame a project around sports, right? I think that if you're thinking statistics, teams, things like that, that's going to be less academic history and more public history in terms of kind of outreach and engagement. And I will say that a lot of sports teams now do hire either on a contractual basis or sometimes specifically historians to work and to do exhibits about the kind of history of sports and things like that. That said, I've also seen historians do sports history from a very analytical lens to ask and to answer, I guess, more what we would call academic or historiographic questions. One of my kind of early advisors, who has sadly passed away, was Professor John Hurt Thompson at Duke University, who wrote specifically on race, manliness, and baseball, and the way in which baseball becomes a sport associated with white masculinity, how that happens around the turn of the Civil War, and how actually the history of baseball frames a kind of way to understand Jim Crow and white masculinity. So it just depends on how and where you want to take that project, your specific interest. And I would definitely suggest that you reach out to either me or Dr. Calderón through email to kind of discuss where specifically you want to take that project. Oh, I will say, by the way, that one of my public history students is doing a sports history based project for this semester for his final project. He is He's doing a kind of a public history exhibit on the 2010 UNI basketball team, which beat Kansas in the Sweet 16. Of course, my burn on that is in 2010, the team that took it all was Duke University. And that was my senior year.
You know,
we beat Butler.
you know what's funny about that, Dr. Dong, is that I remember that game that UNI beat Kansas, and I was wondering, where the heck is that? You know, where the hell is UNI? And then here, here I am, right?
Yeah.
So, anyone else?
I have another question for you. Right now, what I have is I have a European master's degree in sociology, and this degree was professional translated by Iowa Valley Community College District, and I'm wondering how that will harmonize and fit in as a prerequisite for being accepted in that program.
In terms of will credits transfer or
will that
prepare you?
So will my old degree from Germany, will that be accepted at UNI, and then am I able to pursue my master's degree in history?
Uh-huh. And where was your degree from again? A university, accredited university?
Yes. So actually, I graduated from the University of Chemnitz in Germany in 2006 with a master's degree in sociology.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. We haven't. I've never had that that asked. Maybe other graduate coordinators might have had this experience. So, but I would give a strong yes. That it would be fine. I don't see it being a problem as long as it's a accredited university. And we'd have to see the transcripts, right? And so I don't see that being a problem. If I could get a hold of the grad school, and get back to you if you would like.
That would be wonderful. So I
the graduate college. Sorry, I could say grad school.
So I can see what prerequisites I have to take, if there's anything, So I don't know if I have to take any tests before or anything else.
I strongly doubt it, because you are already you teach already. You're in an academic setting already, and so I think that even if you weren't, your degree qualifies you to apply to a program. We've had students apply to the master's program who were not history majors. Were sociology, anthropology, actually, political science, somewhere in the humanities, right? I have a student right now who did political science and was interested in kind of international relations, and so he went to Central College. And so no, I don't see a problem with that. If anything, if there was some sort of problem, I'm sure we could work with you.
Okay.
So I don't see that as I'm confident that would be fine. Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, and I saw I did a little bit of research. If my university I went to is kind of known in Iowa, and I found out my technical University of Chemnitz has kind of a partnership with Iowa State University. So I'm not sure if they have something with UNI. About 8 years ago, UNI had an international coordinator, and we tried to hook him up with the Technical University of Chemnitz down the line, because they have a pretty good social science and history program. So they were really interested one time. But then the advisor, he disappeared to another college.
Yeah, we do have an international office,
yes,
of international for international students, and but I don't know much about what your friend's experience was, but they would also could be helpful. But those are more mainly catered to, you know, certain visas for students and stuff like that. But I'm sure that, you know, you could find information there if you needed to. But the grad school would largely, you know, would help with that if it was necessary, you know.
Okay. Yeah, and then my degree, because what I did when I was hired by Ellsworth Bio Valley, they also sponsored my original green card, and with that they had my degrees translated by Morningside Institute or something like this. That was a requirement at that time, and that also qualified. And I'm also a U.S. citizen now since January of 2020. So
Yeah.
And
my wife had a similar experience. She's from Mexico City, and when she applied, she graduated from the University of Wisconsin, and she had to do some translating like that too, you know, of her degree. It was kind of funny. They just said you just do it yourself, you know, and just did a spreadsheet and made it look as official as she could. You know, it was really funny. And they were like, okay, fine, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. So you know, I don't want to sweep it under the rug sort of thing, but you know, we'll cross that bridge when we have to, and I don't see it really being an obstacle. You know, I don't see why, right? Especially since you have citizenship, you know. So
yes,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, is it Kiergan? I'm sorry.
It's Kerrigan.
Kerrigan, I'm sorry. I knew that.
You're fine.
I practiced that in front of the mirror. Jeez, man.
There was mention of needing proficiency in a second language. I just wanted to clarify, was that in the more like prestigious programs, or was that like a general thing among most graduate programs?
I also had that question.
That's a good question. So for our master's program, we do not require a second language, but we do expect, for instance, if you're going into, you know, you want to study Japanese history or Chinese history or Latin America, that you do have some sort of understanding, that you're at least able to read, right, and have a, you know, intermediate or better, you know, understanding of another language. For PhD programs, that is a requirement. You need to have, oftentimes, in addition to English, 2 other languages, and that also depends on what field you go into. So, for instance, my friends at the University of Minnesota, who did you know, ancient history in the Middle East, or in the Middle East, let's use that as an example, they had to learn a ton of languages, Arabic, Latin, you know, maybe Spanish or French, you know, and know how to write as well. So, you know, different alphabets, they had to also learn different alphabets. So, so the expectations are different in master's programs than PhD. The language expectations are different in master's programs than PhDs. Ideally, we would like you to know another language just for the sake of it. I think that's important in general, right? And especially if it's in your field, the field that you want to go into, because that opens up a number of doors for you in terms of you know, the sources you're able to sink your teeth into, right? You don't have to look for translated documents or anything like that if you were able to read German or French or Spanish or Russian or something, you know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, lastly, PhD programs, they do offer scholarships for their students to learn, you know, languages, and generally they're in the summer, right? And you go to like an institute, right? Middlebury College, actually, in Vermont Vermont, New Hampshire, yeah, has a really good summer language institute, and it's called a FLAS, and they give you, a few $1,000s, and they pay, I think, your way and your tuition there and a little stipend, and you just learn that language, right? If it's not offered at your university, even if it's offered at university, you can still, go to these summer institutes. But other languages like, how to read, how to write Sanskrit, or learn Tamil, or, more complicated languages that are not taught in universities. Generally, that's what those institutes are for. And some of them are in those countries too. One of my grad students was studying Mosquito language, which is an indigenous language in a very small, remote place of Nicaragua. And she went there and to learn it, because that was really the only place you could go.
And I would say they do expect some level of, that you show that you have a little bit of that language before you apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before you apply, definitely.
Okay.
But not. But they'll make you go through their process. So to be certified that yes, you can. It's either an exam or something. I got sort of lucky initially, because Spanish is my first language, and so they had me just translate a paragraph from a book, from English into Spanish, or I think it was Spanish into English. But in grad school, I had to learn Portuguese, or as best as I could, just to pass the exam. I can sort of understand it, read it here and there, but yeah. You were gonna say something. I'm sorry we interrupted you.
So if if my topic interest would be like the Renaissance England,
Mm-hmm.
what would you suggest would be like the best second language to learn?
Well, are you a student here?
I'm an art history major.
An art history major. Okay. So our department head, Dr. McNabb, is an English historian, and actually has done a lot on the Renaissance. And I don't know if you know her or know of her.
I don't.
Yeah, and she would be delighted, delighted to meet with you. And she would probably be able to give you. She would definitely be able to give you more advice on in respects to what are the language you would learn. I don't know if it would be Gaelic, or Gaelic, yeah, or Old English or something, or I really can't tell you, because I wouldn't know, but she would be able to give you an answer, a much better answer. Sorry, I don't have the answer for you. But,
Okay.
yeah, but I'm more than sure, if it's not some other form of Old English or something, definitely probably either French, or or Spanish, or I don't know. Again, I'm just kind of throwing things out there.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would say that Old English, if you want to pick up Old English, it's pretty easy. Especially I was thrown in the deep end at one point in one of my undergraduate courses, was taught by a really interesting grad student, just assigned long text in Old English, and we sank or swam. And when I found that if you just read Old English for long enough, at some point a light goes off and you can understand it. I don't even know how to describe it.
Kerrigan, are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what? Welsh. I would say probably Welsh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is, I had a Welsh friend at the University of Minnesota, but it was funny because she had lived in the United States. She came to the United States for her undergrad. She went to Harvard. It was funny because every time she would talk about that school, she would never say Harvard. She'd be like, "Oh, we'd ask her like, where'd you go to undergrad?" She's like, "Oh, this little college in Boston, in Cambridge." It's like, Harvard? They're like, yes, it's like, anyways, she read all of Harry Potter in Welsh, and so that was she said it was really complicated. So I think that might be one, depending on where you
Okay.
what you decide on doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you taken classes with Dr. Sutton, Elizabeth Sutton?
Yeah, she's my academic advisor.
Oh, okay. She's a really good friend of mine. Really good friend.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. She's my comrade. Well, I think that does anybody have any more questions? I don't want to, of course, if something pops up, please feel free to email me if it's more of a public history or, question, please email Dr. Dong. We're more than happy to respond or talk to you and respond, of course, to your questions. I hope that this was an informative session and that you think about grad school and whether it's here or somewhere else. And but one of the benefits of being at UNI, it's that you can easily come talk to us, and have one-on-ones, and we can really help you achieve your intellectual goals. And I think that our program would be a great place to go, and maybe other ones as well, so okay. Well, thank you very much for attending this session. I hope it was good for you. It definitely was always good for us to talk about these things and remain kind of fresh in our mind. And we look forward to continuing to hear from you. Again, our doors are open, and we wish you the best, in your intellectual endeavors. Dr. Dong, anything?
No, thank you all for coming, and really we hope to hear more from you.
Exactly. Well, thanks again, everyone, and have a good night and be safe.
Yeah, thank you. Dankeschön.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.